Zira, the young alien princess, sat in the dark cell of the warlord's fortress. She could hear the sounds of the busy guards outside, their voices loud as they moved around, not paying attention to the woman trapped inside. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders and her green eyes stared at the cold stone walls, lost in thought. She had never imagined her life would end like this. She had been born to rule, to bring peace to her people, but now she was just a prisoner, waiting for her death. Zira's home planet was a beautiful place full of green valleys and towering mountains. It was a world where peace reigned and people worked together. But that was before the warlord came. He invaded, took control of her planet, and left destruction in his wake. Zira's family fought bravely to defend their world, but in the end, they lost. Her father, the king, was captured, and Zira was taken as a hostage. Now she sat alone in her prison, her fate sealed. She had heard whispers from the guards about her future. They spoke of her public execution in the warlord's arena, where prisoners were forced to fight for their lives or be killed. The thought of it made Zira's stomach turn. But she would not let fear take over. She was a princess, and she would die with dignity, just as her ancestors had taught her. Zira tried to stand up, stretching her sore muscles. She had been locked away for days, with little food and even less water. Her clothes were torn, and her once perfect appearance was now a shadow of its former self. Still, she held her head high, determined to remain strong. She would not give the warlord the satisfaction of seeing her break. As she sat back down, lost in thought, a voice echoed in the hallway outside her cell. The voice was harsh, full of anger. Zira could feel her heart race as she recognized the speaker. It was the warlord himself, his boots heavy against the stone floor as he walked toward her. The door to her cell creaked open, and the warlord stepped inside. He was a large figure, his dark armor glinting in the dim light. His eyes were cold, like those of a predator, and Zira felt a shiver run down her spine. "So, princess," he said, his voice mocking, "you think you can escape your fate? You're just another prisoner, another toy to play with." Zira did not speak. She stood up slowly, meeting his gaze with unwavering eyes. She would not show him fear. "Your execution will be a public spectacle," the warlord continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Your people will watch as you lose your head. It will be the end of the line for your family, your bloodline. How does that feel?" Zira's hands clenched into fists, but she stayed silent. She would not let him see how much his words hurt. She had learned long ago that showing weakness would only give others power over you, and she would not give the warlord that satisfaction. The warlord chuckled and turned to leave. "Prepare yourself, princess. The arena awaits. Tomorrow you will face your death." As he left, Zira sank to her knees, her heart heavy with the weight of the situation. But there was something inside her that refused to give up. She had always believed in the power of hope, even in the darkest of times. She would not let the warlord win. She would find a way out, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Meanwhile, far away from the fortress, a human soldier named Max was preparing for a mission of his own. Max had fought in the war against the warlord's forces. He had seen the destruction and loss the warlord had caused, and he had sworn to do everything in his power to stop him. Max was known for his bravery and his ability to complete even the most dangerous missions. He had heard rumors about the princess's capture. At first, he had dismissed them as just stories, but the more he learned, the more he realized that saving her was the right thing to do. He could not let an innocent life be lost, especially not someone as important as the princess. Max had never met Zira, but he knew her name. Her father's name was famous across the galaxy, and so was Zira's. She was a symbol of hope for many, the last hope for a planet that had lost everything. Max's heart filled with determination. He would rescue her, no matter the cost. Though, plan was risky. Max had to infiltrate the warlord's fortress, avoid detection, and find the princess before it was too late. He had been in dangerous situations before, but nothing compared to this. He had no idea what he would face once he reached the fortress, but he knew he had no choice. He had to try. The night before the mission, Max sat alone in his small quarters, preparing his gear. His hands moved quickly, checking each tool, ensuring everything was in order. He was ready for this, even if it meant putting his life on the line. As he finished packing, Max looked out the window, his thoughts turning to the princess. He wondered what she was like. Was she as strong as her reputation suggested? Or was she just another frightened captive? He hoped that when he found her, she would be as determined to fight as he was. The next morning, Max set off. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but he wasn't afraid. He had a mission to complete, and he would not rest until it was done. Little did he know, his life was about to change forever. For the Princess Zira was not just a royal captive. She was about to meet the one person who could change everything. As Max made his way through the dense forest surrounding the warlord's fortress, he thought of the journey ahead. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from anticipation. He was going to save her, and nothing was going to stop him. The sun set over the warlord's fortress, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Inside the massive arena, the crowd gathered, their voices a loud hum of excitement. They were there to watch the spectacle of the day, a spectacle that would mark the end of a princess's life. Zira stood in the center of the arena, her wrists bound tightly by chains, her heart beating in her chest like a drum. The arena was vast, a circular pit surrounded by rows of stone seats. The crowd roared as they waited for the entertainment to begin. Zira tried to ignore their harsh shouts, but it was impossible. The jeers and laughter filled the air, mocking her, pushing her closer to despair. Her mind raced, searching for a way out, a plan to survive. But the truth was, there was no plan. She had no weapon, no allies. The warlord had stripped her of everything. Her only hope was to escape, but the chances of that happening were slim. Still, she refused to give in. She was a princess, and no matter what happened, she would die with dignity. The warlord's voice echoed through the arena, causing the crowd to fall silent. "Today you will witness the end of the last royal bloodline," he shouted. "The princess of the fallen planet will pay the price for defying me. The time has come for her to face her doom." The crowd cheered, and Zira's heart sank. They didn't care about her. To them, she was just another prisoner to watch fall. Zira's gaze wandered over the arena, scanning for any sign of escape. But it was hopeless. She was surrounded by walls too high to climb, and every guard in the area was watching her. She would have to fight or she would die. But how? She had no weapons, no training for battle. She was a royal, not a warrior. The warlord gave a cruel laugh, sensing her despair. "You thought you could defeat me?" he mocked. "You thought you could rule this galaxy? Now you'll pay the price for your foolishness." Just as he raised his hand to signal the start of her execution, the ground beneath Zira's feet shook. The crowd gasped, and Zira staggered, struggling to keep her balance. She looked around, confused, unsure of what was happening. Then, from the far corner of the arena, a loud explosion rocked the structure. A massive cloud of smoke filled the air, and the sound of blaster fire echoed through the chaos. The crowd screamed, and the warlord's soldiers scrambled to regain control. Zira's heart raced. This was her chance. She quickly moved toward the edge of the arena, using the confusion to her advantage. The guards were distracted, their attention focused on the explosion. Zira saw a small doorway on the far side of the arena and made her way toward it. Her chains clinked with each step, but she didn't care. She had to get out, or this would be her last day alive. But as she neared the door, a figure emerged from the smoke. A human soldier, wearing a dark flight suit and a helmet, his face hidden. He moved with skill, taking down one guard after another with swift, precise moves. Zira watched in awe as the soldier cleared a path through the chaos, his blaster firing with deadly accuracy. The soldier didn't notice her at first, too focused on the battle around him. But then their eyes met. Zira froze, her breath catching in her throat. She had never seen a human before, not like this. He was tall, strong, his movements sharp and confident. There was something in his gaze, something that told her he wasn't just here to fight. He was here to save her. "Princess," the soldier said, his voice muffled by his helmet, but his tone clear. "We need to move. Now." Zira didn't hesitate. She reached for the soldier, her hand trembling, and he pulled her toward him, guiding her through the confusion. He was quick, decisive, and even in the midst of the chaos, Zira could feel a sense of safety with him. She had no idea who he was, or why he was here, but in that moment she didn't care. He was her chance for survival. As they ran toward the exit, Zira could hear the warlord's furious shouts behind them. "You coward!" he yelled. "She's mine! You will not take her from me!" The soldier didn't respond. He pushed Zira forward, moving them quickly through the corridors of the fortress. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the narrow hallways, the walls cold and unforgiving. The ship shot through the stars, its engines roaring as it escaped the warlord's fortress. Inside, Zira sat silently, staring out of the small window at the endless expanse of space. Her heart was still racing and her mind was a blur. The chaos of the arena, the soldiers' sudden arrival and the escape, all of it felt like a dream. Was she really free? Or was this just another illusion before her fate caught up to her? Max, the soldier who had saved her, sat at the controls, focused on flying the ship. His hands moved quickly over the buttons and levers, adjusting their course as they flew deeper into the unknown. Zira could see the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the set of his jaw firm and determined. She didn't know much about him, only that he was human and that he had risked everything to rescue her. She glanced at him, her curiosity growing. He had said little since they had escaped, his focus entirely on keeping them safe. But now, with the warlord's fortress far behind them, she felt it was time to speak. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Why did you come for me?" Max didn't immediately answer. He adjusted the ship's navigation systems, keeping his attention on their course. After a long moment, he finally spoke. His voice low. "My name is Max," he said. "I've been fighting the warlord's forces for years. I was part of a resistance group. We've been trying to take him down, but he's too strong. I heard about your capture, and when I found out you were in the arena, I couldn't just sit by and let you die. I couldn't let him win." Zira listened closely, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. She had never imagined that someone like him, a human, a soldier, would care enough to risk everything for her life. Humans were known for their strength, but they were also distant, focused on their own survival. Yet Max had come for her, and that meant something. "But why me?" she asked, still confused. "I'm just a princess. I have no power anymore. I don't even have a home." Max glanced at her then, his eyes softening. "You're more than just a princess, Zira. You're a symbol of hope. People across the galaxy are watching you, waiting for a leader to rise up. I know you didn't choose this fight, but you've become part of something much bigger than yourself. And I couldn't let you fall." Zira felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had never seen herself as a symbol, just a girl trying to survive, trying to save her people. But Max believed in her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe she wasn't completely alone. "Thank you," she whispered, the words simple but filled with gratitude. Max nodded, returning his focus to the controls. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of danger. The warlord won't stop looking for us." Zira's eyes wandered to the stars again, a sense of dread settling in her stomach. She knew Max was right. The warlord had too many soldiers, too many ships. They couldn't hide forever. "Where are we going?" Zira asked, her voice steady despite the fear she felt inside. "I have a safe place," Max replied. "It's a rebel base on a distant moon. We can regroup there, plan our next move, but we need to stay low. The warlord's fleet is big and they'll be looking for us everywhere." Zira nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was part of a fight for her people, for her planet, for the future. and she had no idea where it would lead, but one thing was certain. She couldn't do this alone. For hours, they traveled through the cold emptiness of space, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. Zira found herself thinking about her home, her father, her people. She had been raised to be a queen, to lead her people with strength and wisdom. But now everything had changed. Her world was gone, and she was forced to start over. Max's voice broke the silence. "We'll get them back. You'll get your planet back." Zira turned to him surprised. "How can you be sure?" Max's face was serious, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I've seen what you can do. You're stronger than you think. I've fought alongside rebels, soldiers, and warriors from all over the galaxy, and none of them had the courage you do. You've been through more than anyone should have to bear, and yet you're still standing. That says something." Zira felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. She had always known she was meant for something more, that she had a duty to her people. But hearing it from Max, someone who had fought alongside so many others, made her realize just how much strength she still had inside. She had lost everything, but she had gained something too, the chance to fight for what was right. As the ship drew closer to the rebel base, Zira could feel the tension building again. They were getting close to safety, but they were not safe yet. The warlords' forces could be anywhere, watching them from the shadows. Max guided the ship into the base, a small moon hidden away from the prying eyes of the galaxy. The base was surrounded by thick clouds, making it nearly impossible to spot from space. Zira breathed a sigh of relief as the ship landed safely on the surface, the engines powering down. They were here, but the real work was just beginning. As they exited, the ship Zira took in the sight of the rebel base. It was a modest settlement with makeshift buildings and small huts scattered around a central square. The air was thick with the smell of machinery and old technology, but there was a sense of hope in the air, a hope that had been missing for so long. "We'll be safe here for now," Max said, leading her toward the central building. "But we'll need to gather allies, resources, and information. The warlord won't stop until he finds us." Zira nodded, determination filling her heart. She had come this far. She wasn't about to stop now. "Let's get to work," she said quietly, her voice filled with newfound strength. The base was quieter than Zira had expected. Despite the buzzing machines and scattered activity, there was an underlying calm, a sense of organization that made her feel slightly more at ease. It was a far cry from the chaos of the arena or the cold, oppressive walls of the warlord's fortress. But Zira knew that safety here was only temporary. The warlord would not stop hunting her, and she couldn't hide forever. Max led her through the narrow paths of the base, past groups of rebels working on different tasks. There were women and men of all ages, many of them wearing the same worn-out clothes and boots. They were strong, battle-hardened, but their eyes still held hope. They believed in the cause, in the fight against the warlord, and in the possibility of winning back their freedom. As they walked, Zira couldn't help but feel out of place. She had spent most of her life in palaces, surrounded by luxury and the expectations of royalty. She had never been part of something like this, a rebellion. She had never had to fight for her life, and yet here she was, surrounded by people who had been fighting for so long. "Don't worry," Max said, noticing her hesitation. "You're part of this now. You'll see. Everyone here wants to fight, with you, not just for you." Zira nodded, though she still felt like an outsider. She had spent her life being a symbol, a princess, but now she needed to become more than that. She needed to be a leader. The weight of her responsibilities felt heavier than ever. They reached the central command building, where a few rebels were gathered around a large table, looking at a holographic map of the region. The atmosphere here was serious, focused. As they approached, the group looked up, their expressions curious but respectful. "Max," one of the rebels said, a tall woman with short-cropped hair. "Who's this?" "This is Princess Zira," Max said, his voice calm but firm. "We've been through a lot together. She's here to help us." The room fell silent. Zira could feel their eyes on her, each one weighing her presence, unsure of what to make of her. She had to prove herself. "I know you may not trust me," Zira said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm not here as a princess. I'm here as someone who's lost everything, just like all of you. I need your help, and together, we can bring down the warlord." The room remained silent for a moment before the woman who had spoken earlier nodded. "We'll give you a chance," she said, "but if you're going to lead us, you'll need to prove it. Actions speak louder than words." Zira felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The rebels were willing to give her a chance. She knew it. Wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to fight. They all were. Max turned to the map, his finger tracing along the edges of the holographic display. "The warlord's forces are spread out across the region, but we've identified his main stronghold. It's heavily fortified, and it will be nearly impossible to infiltrate without the right resources. But we have one advantage." "What's that?" Zira asked, her curiosity piqued. Max smiled. "We have the element of surprise. If we can move quickly, we can strike before he has a chance to react. We just need a few more people, a few more weapons, and we can hit him where it hurts." Zira nodded. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. She wasn't sure how they would pull it off, but she trusted Max and the rebels. They had already fought and survived together for so long. She had to believe they could win. The rest of the day was spent preparing. Zira worked alongside the rebels, helping where she could, though she often found herself in the way. She wasn't used to manual labor, but she had to learn quickly. She watched Max as he worked, his calm demeanor making it clear that he had been through many battles. He was focused, never rushing, always thinking 2 steps ahead. It made Zira admire him even more. The first light of dawn broke across the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the rebel base. The air was crisp and cool, and Zira felt the weight of the morning settle around her like a heavy cloak. The day had come, the day they would face the warlord and his army, the day they would fight for freedom. Zira stood outside the command building looking at the small group of rebels who had gathered. There was a sense of calm before the storm, a quiet determination in every face. She could feel the tension in the air, but there was also something else, a sense of unity. These people were fighting for their homes, their families, and for something much greater than themselves. She knew they believed in the cause, but they also believed in her. That was something she would never take for granted. Max was nearby, checking his equipment. He was calm, focused, as always. Zira had watched him over the past few days and admired his confidence, his ability to stay level-headed even in the most dangerous situations. He had been her anchor, the one person who had stood by her side when the world had seemed to fall apart. "Are you ready?" Max asked, his voice low but filled with quiet strength. Zira nodded, though she could feel the butterflies in her stomach. "I think so," she said, trying to steady her nerves. "I have to be." Max smiled slightly, his eyes warm. "You are," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this. We've got this." For a moment, Zira closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had been through so much already, captured, lost her family, fought for survival, but nothing compared to the weight of this moment. This was her chance to reclaim everything she had lost. Her people were counting on her. She couldn't afford to fail. The rest of the rebels gathered around, ready for the mission. Zira stood at the front, feeling the eyes of everyone on her. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was their leader, their hope. It was a heavy responsibility, but it was one she had accepted. She would lead them into battle and do whatever it took to stop the warlord. The plan was simple, though dangerous. They would move quickly, using the element of surprise to attack the warlord's stronghold. Max had been working with the rebels to prepare for this moment, coordinating the attack from the shadows, while Zira had spent the past few days building trust with the people around her. She had come to see them not just as rebels, but as her family, her new home. As they prepared to leave, Zira looked over at Max, who was now checking his weapon, his expression serious. He had been quiet, almost distant over the last few hours. Zira couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside his mind. She had grown close to him, and she had felt something shift between them, something deeper than just friendship or teamwork. But Max had been hesitant, as if afraid to cross a line. She couldn't blame him. This mission was too important for distractions, for emotions. But Zira couldn't ignore what she felt. "Max," she said, stepping closer to him. "Before we leave, I just want to say thank you. For everything." Max looked up, his eyes meeting hers. There was a moment of silence before he nodded. "You don't need to thank me. I'm doing this because it's the right thing. I promised I'd help, and I'm not going to stop until we win." Zira smiled softly, but she could see the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes were still filled with concern. She could feel his worry, his fear for what lay ahead. She understood. They were both risking everything. "I know," she said quietly. "But still, you've done more than you realize. I couldn't have come this far without you." Max's expression softened, and for a moment the hardness in his eyes seemed to fade. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. "You're stronger than you think, Zira. I've seen it. I've seen you stand tall, even when the world's crashing down around you." Zira's heart skipped a beat at his words, but she quickly turned her attention back to the mission. "We'll do this together," she said, her voice steady. "For my people, for all of us." Max nodded, his eyes lingering on her for a moment longer before he turned to join the others. Zira watched him go, her thoughts swirling in her mind. She couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. It was more than just gratitude. It was something deeper, something that grew with each passing day. The rebels set out, moving quickly and quietly through the dense forest surrounding the base. The ship had been prepared, and they were ready for the journey ahead. Zira couldn't help but glance back at the base one last time, wondering if she would ever return. This was it. The final push. The battle that would determine the future of her people. As they boarded the ship, Zira took a seat next to Max. He gave her a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. She could tell he was still worried. She didn't blame him. This mission was dangerous. They were about to face the warlord's forces head-on. There was no room for mistakes. The ship took off, rising into the sky as the base grew smaller beneath them. Zira watched the ground disappear, her thoughts turning back to her home. She had lost everything, her family, her planet, her life as she knew it. But now, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had something to fight for. Again, and she wasn't alone. She had Max and the rebels, and together they had a chance to win. As the ship flew through the stars, Zira leaned back in her seat, her hand brushing against Max's once more. He didn't pull away this time. His hand stayed next to hers, their fingers just barely touching. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Zira knew they were in this together, and that was all that mattered. The ship hummed steadily as it cut through the empty expanse of space. Zira sat in silence, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of her seat. She could feel the weight of what was to come, the tension in her chest growing with each passing second. The warlord's stronghold loomed ahead, a dark spot against the backdrop of stars. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by high walls and massive shields. The odds were stacked against them, but Zira knew they had no other choice. This was their chance, the only chance to strike. Max sat beside her, his eyes focused on the view ahead. He hadn't said much since they left the rebel base, but Zira could sense the concern in his gaze. He was worried, and she couldn't blame him. This mission was dangerous. It wasn't just about taking down the warlord, it was about stopping a tyrant who had torn apart her world, a man who had taken everything she held dear. "Are you ready?" Max asked quietly, his voice calm but filled with an unspoken weight. Zira turned to him, her heart pounding. She could see the determination in his eyes, the quiet strength he carried with him. She had always known that Max was a fighter, but now she understood that he was more than just a soldier. He was her ally, her protector, and something more. She didn't have to say it out loud. She could feel it in the air between them. She cared for him deeply. And though they were both focused on the mission, there was an unspoken connection that neither of them could deny. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, though inside, a storm of emotions swirled. "Let's end this." The ship moved closer to the warlord's fortress, the alarms blaring as they neared the heavily fortified area. Zira's pulse quickened. They had trained for this moment, preparing their attack, strategizing every move. They had the element of surprise, but that would only get them so far. It would be the strength of their will that would carry them through. As the ship entered the atmosphere of the warlord's stronghold, Zira could see the defense shields activating, creating a shimmering barrier around the fortress. The ship's sensors warned of incoming fire. Max's hands moved quickly, adjusting the controls, evading the laser beams that streaked toward them. "We're almost there," Max said, his voice tight. "Brace yourself." Zira nodded, gripping the edge of her seat. She had faced death before, but nothing like this. She had been a captive, helpless, but now she was fighting back. This was her chance to reclaim her life, her freedom. It was a chance for all of them to stand up to the warlord's tyranny. The ship jolted as it broke through the shields and landed near the fortress entrance. The rebels were already in position, their weapons ready. Zira's heart raced as she grabbed her own blaster, feeling its weight in her hand. This was real. This was happening. Max turned to her, his gaze intense. "Stay close," he said. "We move fast and strike hard, no hesitation." Zira nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't the helpless princess anymore. She was a warrior, fighting for the people she loved and the world she had lost. The doors of the ship opened, and they rushed out, joining the rebels as they made their way to the fortress gates. The battle was fierce, the air thick with smoke and the sound of blaster fire. Zira moved quickly, her heart pounding in her chest as she took cover behind a large boulder. She fired her blaster, hitting one of the warlord's soldiers. It felt strange, yet empowering, to take control of her fate, to fight for what was right. Max was beside her, covering her as she moved forward. He was everywhere, guiding the rebels, taking down enemies with swift precision. Zira couldn't help but watch him, seeing how easily he led them, how he protected everyone around him. He was fearless, and in that moment Zira realized just how much he meant to her. "Stay focused," Max called out, snapping Zira out of her thoughts. She turned back to the battle, her eyes narrowing as she saw the warlord's forces gathering near the fortress entrance. They were preparing for a final defense,